What up, what up, what up? What's going on, Real Sales Talk? Friends and family, I hope you've had a fantastic week. It's Sunday night for me. It's the end of the day. I've had a very long day, and I wanted to fit in an episode of Real Sales Talk. Now, this is still season 3, and if you listened to last week's episode with Henry and I, you heard some very big news. And if you haven't, let me just catch you up to speed. Henry is going to be moving on and putting all of his energies into his dad's business in which he's taking over. And we had a conversation several weeks ago about how he wanted to put more time into Real Sales Talk, but felt like he couldn't and thought that it would be best if he moved on. So we're going to miss Henry deeply. It's not going to be the same show without him. However, we have a new co-host coming on, Phil Keene. He's the demand generation director. Hope I got that right. With a company called Octave. Super excited. We've been doing some planning. We've got some new things that we're going to introduce. In fact, we're moving from 2 segments, Real Sales Talk and Tech Talk, to 3 segments. So super excited about that. We're going to introduce a new segment where we just go straight on into answering questions, straight on Q&A that we take from you all, our Real Sales Talk listeners. And when we interview people, when we have guests on the show, which, by the way, we're getting some sick guests lined up for season 4, which starts November 30th. And when we do these, we're actually going to do them not live. We're going to record them and then put them up. So our live episode is going to be a Q&A, and we're also going to do continue to do this tech talk, or sales resource talk, or maybe we'll rename it something. I don't know, but extremely excited. Big things to come. We're looking at getting a sponsor. So if you know of anyone or your company is interested in sponsoring Real Sales Talk, we've got a deal for you. So this episode, I'm doing this episode because I actually skipped over an entire episode in the middle of season 3. So this is season 3 episode, let's call it 10.5. We could call it 11 if we want to. But this one's all about price anchoring. And I'm going to talk about what it is and how to use it in your sales process. I've been thinking about getting a little bit more tactical. I would love to do another one of these about some specific closing techniques, because I think that's something that is extremely powerful and really is where the rubber meets the road for salespeople. So tonight, though, I want to talk about an idea called price anchoring, or anchoring, and it really is this common cognitive bias that humans have to rely on the first piece of information, or in this case, the first number that they see. They tend to gravitate, they tend to use that in comparison to other numbers. So the perfect example of this would be, you mention a number, it could even be a price point, or it really doesn't have to do anything with pricing. But it could be a number, like, let's say in the middle of your presentation, you talk about how much money they could make if they implement a tool like whatever you sell. And that number, let's just make up a number, it's $20,000, sticks in their mind. And as you get to the end of the presentation and you get to talking about pricing, you already know that your pricing is $1,000 or $5,000. But because you've already mentioned that $20,000 number that doesn't really have anything to do with the pricing of your product, that number still sticks in their mind, and it becomes a cognitive bias. They use that $20,000 number to compare the $2,000 price point of your product. And so it makes it feel like they're getting a really good deal, even though they're not intentionally trying to compare the two numbers. So anchoring, price anchoring, it's this cognitive bias that humans have to remember that initial number. Now, there was a study done by the University of Missouri where they were evaluating the effects of price anchoring, and researchers asked subjects to estimate the worth of a sample home. They provided pamphlets that included information about the surrounding houses. Some had normal prices and other had artificially inflated prices. Both a group of undergraduate students and a selection of real estate experts were swayed by the pamphlet with the higher prices. Anchoring influenced the real estate professionals. So placing a premium product or service near a standard product will help you sell that standard product. Even though you may have no intention of selling that premium product, it makes that standard product seem like a great deal. So I want to give you a couple of ways that you can use this, because this is really, really key. And this is almost like a sales ninja move. I love using price anchoring. So I used an example earlier, but let me just kind of break that down a little bit more. So if you're selling, let's say, a physical product, you're asking that buyer lots of questions, and you're trying to find out what problems they're solving. And hopefully you're also talking about what that product, if they implement it, will do. What type of impact will that have? And let's say you ask that potential customer or buyer, now it sounds like there's a big opportunity to implement this solution. Talk to me a little bit about where you see, what type of financial impact this might have. And the buyer might go into, well, currently we're spending $10,000 a month doing this process manually. Now, if we bought a product like yours, that could save us 75% of that. So we would be spending $2,500 instead of that $10,000 a month. And the salesperson might say something like, wow, that's a lot of money, isn't it? Buyer says, yeah, it is. We could put that money towards X and Y and Z. Now, because you've established that $10,000 price point or savings, even though it has nothing to do with your product's pricing, that still sticks in that person's mind. And they're the ones that set it. Now, when you ask a question like this, what type of financial impact this could have on a business, you want to ask questions will produce a larger number, a much larger number than your product or your service. You have to be very intentional about asking questions around this, because if you don't know what type of response they'll give when you ask them something around numbers, you could get something that's lower than what your product cost, and it has a negative impact when you get to the very end to talk about pricing. So for that buyer or prospect, since they've mentioned that $10,000 when you get to the end and pricing becomes a topic of conversation, and you say, our product, you might actually remind them of that number that they mentioned. Now, you told me earlier that you were spending $10,000 doing this process manually, and you think that it could save you 75% of the money or time associated with that, the cost associated with that time or resources committed to that. Now, the good news is that our product is only going to cost you $1,000. And you might let that sit in a moment and pause and let them think about that. And then you might ask them a rhetorical question. That's a pretty amazing deal, isn't it? And let them respond. This is a really great way to use price anchoring. Now, another way to use this, I'll use an example of a master pitchman, Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs. He was really, really good at using price anchoring. In fact, one of the most memorable and notable presentations that he made leveraging price anchoring was when he introduced the very first iPad. And if you go back and you search YouTube and you watch this presentation, he goes through and he talks about all the things that it does, all the ways that it's different from everything else. And he gets to pricing and he says, now, if we listen to the pundits, we should price it at around $1,000. And you see the $999 number pop up on the screen behind him. And he goes into this explanation of how they wanted to get the iPad into as many hands as possible, into as many homes as possible, because of how they believe that it would enrich and benefit people. And he says, they worked really hard to meet their cost goals. And because of that, they're not pricing it at $9.99. They're pricing it at $4.99. And you have this like animated graphic where this $499 number comes down and crushes the $9.99, and you hear this glass shattering. It's really dramatic. What did he do there? He leveraged price anchoring, right? Because he mentioned the $9.99 initially. People who were watching that presentation remember the $9.99, and then he shows them the $4.99, and it makes it seem like a really amazing deal. And really, an iPad for $500, gosh, that's a lot of money for a computer, right? But he does such a good job at building up the value of the iPad, anchoring the product by showing the people in the audience the $999 price point, which is made up, right? He makes it up out of thin air, shows them the $999, and then all of a sudden when he presents the $499 price point, it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is half of what the pundits said. So this is another really, really great example of how you can do this. If you get to the end of the presentation, you can utilize that technique that Steve Jobs did. And I've done this before. Now, we want to get this product into the hands of as many people as possible. And a lot of people told us that we should really be pricing our software at $5,000 on an annual basis. But we knew that that would limit some people from being able to benefit from our product. So we worked really hard and we found a way to get the pricing not at $5,000 annually, but at $2,500. So that's price anchoring. And those are a couple of ways that you can use price anchoring. It's a really, really powerful way to leverage cognitive bias. If you don't know much about that, maybe we should talk a little bit about that as well. In fact, I've got someone who would be a perfect guest to talk about cognitive bias. And I will reach out to this person to see if we can get them on the line for season 4, because I think it's so incredibly powerful to use that cognitive bias to sell and sell more. Thanks everyone for tuning in. This is Real Sales Talk Season 3, Episode 10.5. This is going to be the last episode of Season 3. The next time you hear from both Phil and I together, it's going to be Season 4, which starts November 30th. And in the meantime, I've got some goodies that I'm going to be working on. I'm going to be cutting up some clips from our previous episodes and breaking them down to more bite-sized 3, 4, 5, 6-minute clips and distributing them to you periodically throughout the next couple of weeks to give you something to chew on before we begin Season 4. So have a fantastic week, and would love to hear your thoughts on price anchoring. Have you used this before? What do you think about it? Let me know if you end up using it and how it works. I'd love to hear from you. You can tweet me at Sean M. Mitchell on Twitter. Or if you also want to send me an email, you can send an email at sm@seanmmitchell.com. SM, my initials, Sean Mitchell, sm@seanmmitchell.com. And the M in the middle is for my middle name, Michael. That does it for season 3. Thank you so much for making season 3 incredible. It's amazing to see how you all are consuming this content. And if you're enjoying it, write us a review on iTunes. It would mean a lot to us, and it's how we kind of move up in the ranks and get more exposure and get better guests on the show, because the more downloads we have, the more views we have of our content, the bigger we look, and the better leverage that gives us to go to people like Grant Cardone, Gary Vaynerchuk, and any other sales hero out there that you would love to hear from. So this really benefits you. You writing a review is going to benefit this show and getting you the guests that you want to have on this show. So thanks again, and we'll see you live. Actually, we'll see you on season 4, November 30th. Talk to you soon.